It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org, from Louisville Public Media.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with, the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks to everybody for checking out the series with all the new episodes and interviews. There's a new one released every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 per week. Always appreciate you listening. Always appreciate you leaving comments. To those who have given the series a rating and left a review in the places that you can do that, I'm always grateful for that as well. So thank you. If you're not a subscriber, you've landed here somehow. So you like this type of thing. You like keeping up with your favorite artists. You probably like discovering new artists or just knowing what's going on in music. So hit the subscribe button wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. Of course, you can do it at iTunes and Apple Podcasts. You can do it at Spotify, YouTube, and every single place that has podcasts. You can find it. Just type in Kyle Meredith with. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest, Archers of Loaf. I'm talking with Eric Bachmann. I'm going to say the band are back. They've, of course, kind of been back, and they reunited back in 2011, 2012 for tour, but it's taken till now, till this year, for new music. And I'm going to be talking with Eric about why they came back, what brought them back, nearly a decade ago, why it's taken so long, and what this new music means. From the first single, Raleigh Days, we'll get the backstory on it, on the lyrics, on the music. We'll also hear what to expect from future music. Is there an album? Is it a single series? Eric's going to tell us all of that. We're going to hear what it means to write Archers of Loaf music. Now, if you followed Eric Bachmann's career since the band broke up in the late 90s, he went on to found Crooked Fingers. He's had a great solo career, both with beautiful music that doesn't exactly sound like Archers of Loaf. So when he puts the clothes back on, when he takes the character back out of the box, and that's something he's going to tell you about right there too, what does that mean? What does it feel like to write specifically, not just for Archers of Loaf, but for something that so many folks, myself included, have strong nostalgic ties to? And now beyond all that, speaking of nostalgic ties, it is the 25th anniversary of their second album called Vee Vee. So we're also going to touch upon that. It was an album that they called at the time an album about rocking out, which also intended or not put a mirror up against the scene at that time, the scene that they were a part of. It's a classic album and a really interesting conversation with Eric Bachmann. Let's jump into it. It's Kyle Meredith with Archers of Loaf.
Hey, Kyle, this is Eric Bachmann calling.
First, it is so exciting. I mean, for the past decade, I guess we've been able to say the, Archers of Loaf are back, but it really feels like it's different this time, obviously, because there's new music involved. And I guess we'll back up because the reunion originally came in what, 2012? Was that it?
Yeah, I think 2011, 2012. That's right.
Yeah. So if you don't mind backing up a little bit, why did you all choose then to come back? What brought you back at that point?
So in my mind, I was going to try and present new songs to the band or see if they had anything or see if we could figure anything out. But I had just come back from overseas. I had sort of taken a break. I was in Taiwan for a few months back. I was offered a production job with a band, and I did that. And then I was thinking, well, we had been talking about it, but Sean Nolan, who's the manager of the Archers, had presented the idea to merge, of reissuing it, and had discussed it with me a little bit. So we knew that we wanted to reissue the old albums, and that was the main reason for Reuniting, to promote the reissue of that. And in the back of our mind, we were thinking, let's do something, but nothing was happening. There was nothing. I had sort of found my voice in a way that wasn't compatible with the Archers, and I had to figure out how to navigate it. You don't want to tarnish anything that you do something new that's not good and, that doesn't match what the band was doing before. So it's a complex thing when you try to go backwards or look backwards to present something that's supposed to be looking forwards. Right. How do you navigate that,
I mean, I think you all have said before that you don't want exactly to rehash the past. We're doing this, so how do you overcome that? I mean, how do you speak to something that happened, over that ended over 20 years ago, but still find that new spark?
So I think there's levity in your mind. You have to just not care what anybody thinks to some degree, and I'm fairly good at that. but that's the main thing. And you just kind of have to move forward. And you enjoy, I mean, the thing about working with Matt, Mark, and Eric, the Archers, is that there's a chemistry there that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. Like, I've done it for a long time after the Archers, doing my own thing, and it's just hard to find chemistry like that. There's been people that I've had chemistry with that well, individuals, and that's great. But to have four people that are kind of from the same town with the same aesthetic, with the same sensibilities, it's very hard to find. And then to have that sort of mysterious chemistry or whatever. So I was missing that, and I wanted to do that. And I think the desire to do that just made me work harder on it and work more on songs. And I think Raleigh Days is actually the first one we released is good in the sense that it is kind of rehashing what we did. I mean, just to be candid, it is kind of what we used to do. But the good thing about it is we have about 5 other ones we finished, and we have about 8 or 9 more I'm working on that are going to be different. That'll be something maybe where Watch Out Shero's left off, or maybe something just completely different. So I thought it was a good way to start it, because this is something that isn't exactly foreign. It won't be foreign to Archers of Loaf fans. This will be something they'll recognize, So it's baby steps, and you just kind of don't worry too much. Well, if this isn't going to be well received, I like it. I think I believe in it. So here we go,
But I think, to a point, though, that's like if you're reuniting something, if you're putting the band back together for something that, for a large part of it, beyond the itch that you were looking to scratch, beyond finding that chemistry again, I mean, you can't get away from speaking to the past, right? So, I mean, to a certain degree, you are speaking to a nostalgia that fans have and have wanted to regain to some point, right?
Yeah, and that you have. I had a good time. For the most part, for the first 3 or 4 years, had a really good time in that band. So yeah, that's right. You have to be honest about what it is. It's fun when it works. If it's working, it's great. And if it's not working, you just feel like a moron. It's horrible, and you feel unconfident. So I'm sure as I'm talking to you now, it's early in the new thing, and obviously we're not sure when the shows will be rescheduled because of what's happening with coronavirus. But when that starts taking place again, I'm sure there'll be new songs that I'll play in front of people that I'll kind of cringe as I play them. I'll be like, oh man, this isn't holding up, or this isn't. But the interesting thing about that is, after that, 15 years after that, I used to do that with Icky Metal or with Vee Vee, the old Archers records. I would do that, and now I don't do that. So your relationship with and your opinion of what you did in the past is always, for me, it's always changing. Things that I used to think weren't good are now good, or now at least presentable. That something you believe in, and then for the longest time you would play it and be like, man, the rest of the band likes this, so I play it, but I don't like this song. And then things that they don't like you play, and it's just kind of it's evolving constantly.
Well, let's hit on that, because I should compliment you. Raleigh Days right now, it's my favorite song. I can't get enough of it. It feels great, Like I don't even know the references because I'm not from Raleigh, and I was not in the scene at that point. I was listening to you guys. Of course, I was a little bit younger, but it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to know those references, but I would love to hear you talk about this a little bit more, because as you've said, it is about checking out that scene that you guys came from, and I think from the message you left me and everything, it has to do a lot with overheard Drunken Conversations and a face-to-face sort of scene. What was the idea and the concept there, and how do you remember Drunken Conversations from that long ago?
You don't really remember very well, and so you can kind of fictionalize it too. You can kind of remember it, but the thing about that song is pretty vague. The lyric is pretty vague. I didn't want it to be too specific. One, because like you say, you can't remember details. But I know that we're not from Raleigh. We're from Scarborough, Chapel Hill, and Asheville, North Carolina. But I mean, we played there a bunch, and we played at the Fallout Shelter a few times. But it had a swagger when it was written. I wrote it a little bit slower when I wrote it, the progression, and I wanted it to be faster, just to get out of a certain. The faster you made it, the more it was a tough thing, because the faster it went, the less Iggy Pop swagger it had. The faster it got, it kind of lost that thing. So you had to find the right tempo. And when you sing lyrics like that are kind of bouncing around it like that, the tempo really matters. So I'm thinking about stuff like that. And the lyrics are really so suggestive. I really want to let people in. I really want people to not think it's about a specific thing. To me, it's about very specific things. Overhearing conversations at the merch table of people that are in bands that are just saying ridiculously foolish stuff, or they're just drunk, or they're saying really funny stuff, or they're, you don't want it to be too gossip or anything, but it is in there, and everybody relates to it, and everybody comes from a community. If they're playing music, at least in the 90s they did. Now it's a little different with the internet being kind of the global community, but back then everybody, whether you were from Chapel Hill, or you were from, Bellingham, Washington, or well, you were from San Jose, California, or wherever you were from, you had a little community that you were coming from, and there were those venues. So I felt like it would be a universal appeal that way. But I also, it's essentially, I'm gossiping. You're kind of just talking about people saying stupid stuff, and you don't put a name on it because you don't want to talk trash about anybody. But but it's that.
Well, we put so much myth on the past, and especially pre-internet scenes. The way they're talked about and everything. So I completely get what you're saying. Obviously, here in Louisville, we've got our own history with those moments too, and I had mine, growing up. But there's something about hearing someone from one of those mythological scenes, those legendary scenes, however you want to paint it, kind of crack that door a little bit and let the light in. Yeah,
it's definitely. I definitely wanted it to be relatable, and I think what you're saying is right. Where it's very. Everybody comes from. If you're a music fan and you're from a town, that town has the same kind of a gossipy humor, thing that you can look back on and kind of laugh at. But there's no doubt I overthink this stuff. You ride it to a point and you have to kind of unravel. You want to keep it straightforward, and you want to keep it. You don't want to override it. You don't want to make it too specific so people can still get into it. So it's a funny thing. That's an exercise in leaving stuff out. And a lot of Archers of Loaf music is lyrically leaving stuff out.
Well, it's a perfect rock song. I'll say that. Just as far as I feel, anyway. So since the Archers left and everything, you've had sort of the dual life. Whether it was Crooked Fingers or your solo stuff. Now that you have this back on, I mean, do you know when you're trying to write an Archers song? Does that mean a certain style for you?
Yeah, it's different characters. It's very. I'm very, very, very big David Bowie fan, very big Bruce Springsteen fan. So these people mastered the art of writing from a character. Even Townes Van Zandt, everybody really that writes well. That you kind of at this point it's very nothing's easy, but it's very clear that what I have to do to get a song written for the Archers is sing from this guy that hates commerce and hates Walmart and is bitter about his relationships. That guy is a real part of my personality. There's that part about me that's accurate. But if I'm writing a Crooked Finger song or a solo song, I'm writing from a different character. I'm writing from a different part of my personality. And so it's at this point they're kind of compartmentalized, but there is some crossover. And I think there's melodic sensibilities that are in all of it that I can't avoid, that I can't even hear. Somebody that had worked at Alias, the label Archers were on, was at the Nashville show, the last show we played, and they were talking about how Raleigh Days, some of it sounds like Crooked Fingers, and I'm like, I don't even hear that, man. I can't even hear. To me, it doesn't sound like that at all. But I get her point because it's still the same melodic sensibility that I have in everything, But Archers is definitely more of a smart-ass stance. It's more of a person that's gonna be making fun of things or gonna be a little bit snide, which is, as I get older, is less and less. I'm not like that as much as I used to be, but I can still remember that person. That part of my personality that's still in there. I just sort of have, I guess, matured or something is the right word, or at least know that energizing that part of your personality gets you nowhere. In real life, it just ruins your life. It just makes you a negative creep. So it's fun to be. It's almost a good valve because you can get it out of your system in a way that's not hurting anybody, and maybe people get joy out of. But it was more sincere in my 20s.
That's it. For this, you talk about it being a character like that, regardless of, how much it is a part of you. Does that mean this character was put away in the box for this long and you kind of brought him back out for the songwriting? Does it feel like that in any way?
Yeah, it does. It feels like that. And it feels like, it doesn't feel insincere or anything. It just feels very, it's more fun kind of because you're not attached to it as much. Writing, when you kind of just, it's so difficult to do something good. And if you write 10 things, if you get two of them that are okay, I feel like it's just very difficult, and the bar is set so high with people in the past and other artists. And so it's hard to, when you're asking a question like that, it's almost like if I answer it, I ruin it.
Right,
if I know the answer to it, it kills it or something. So I just try to write from a perception I know, a personality trait that I have that I can hyperbolize.
Right.
And, it was not exercised in all those years doing Crooked Fingers, but it's still there. And to bring it back out wasn't that challenging. It was just more, do I want to bring it back out? Do I want to do that?
I'm personally glad you have so far.
Yeah, you can do. I did it, so I obviously was okay with it. But
So what does that mean for the rest of the songs then? I mean, you said, Raleigh Days, it does kind of pick up where you all left off, but you're saying also that we should not expect that from some of the other ones?
Well, there's certainly more. It's all rock, it's none of it's going to be. There's one song that we did that we always go into the studio with like 5 or 6 songs. We're going to be doing that again later, and we have one wild card where we just kind of leave it. Let's not arrange this here. Let's just build something in the studio because it's fun to do that, and everybody at this point, all of our past idiosyncrasies and relationship problems are gone because we just have had so much time and perspective that we kind of get along really well now. So it's very fun to work in the studio, which it didn't always used to be. But I would say that it's all guitar, bass, and drums. I went into it thinking I don't want to do anything where I have to bring more gear. I want to carry my 2 guitars that I use, maybe bring that little keyboard I have, and I kind of wanted to make sure that it was all within that. But that's an infinite thing. You can still do anything with that. But I think there's some that are equally, rocking, equally kind of fast and have that swagger. There's some that have that, but I think maybe the tonality of the guitars are a little different, and maybe the E.G. and I, Eric Johnson and I, spend a lot of time before even presenting it to Matt and Mark. We send files back and forth, and I'll send him a song, and he'll write his guitar part, and I'll say, well, I'm going to change my guitar part to do this over the same chord progression, and he'll change his, and we just kind of have a dialogue that back and forth. So there's levels at which that stuff varies, and the more we spend time doing that, the further it moves forward. So I think there's going to be some slow ones, and there's going to be some even faster ones. I'm working on one right now as I was working today on one that I'm trying to finish, and it started off really fast, and now I've slowed it down, and I'm about to speed it back up. It just takes time, So what I have written, it might even change when I present it to Mark and Matt and Eric. They'll see things change.
What's the plan from there, though? I mean, is it still just going to be singles like this? Because it doesn't sound like you guys are like wrapping up the album or anything.
No, and we didn't. I mean, in this day and age, man, we didn't really want to do that because it's. I think we just wanted to put out digital singles every 3 or 4 months just to have a reason to play, and have something to promote. And because the internet is so fast and Spotify and all this stuff, all the worlds that changed, and we just kind of wanted to do that. Putting together an album was causing me to have a writer's block. I couldn't. That's part of one of the previous questions you answered, why we brought it back. I couldn't figure out how to write songs for it because I just didn't want to write an album. I didn't have I couldn't use that character or that perspective to write 12 songs, 14 songs, and 50, whatever it takes, to make an album. And so I ended up just therapeutically saying, well, just write one and don't worry about it. And they started to come out, So I thought, well, that's how you do it, man. That's how you beat your writer's block with this. Just write singles, And so now it's a matter of we'll just put out a few singles, maybe even a few 7 inches, and then maybe in a year or two, maybe if there's enough, then Merge might put out a compilation or something. Yeah. Or whatever, but it wouldn't be a cohesive album, and that could change, of course, if something happens creatively where it comes together. But when I start thinking of it that way, man, I just shut down. I can't do it. So for whatever reason,
I'm not complaining. I mean, whatever just keeps the faucet on. It's it's better than the alternative, sure.
Yeah, it's still songs, and it's still. I mean, in a way, it's almost more rewarding because there's always something new. It's not like you put out an album and then like 3 years later there's another album. Mm-hmm. So it's like we'll try to keep putting out a new sounding thing every 2 or 3 months, 3 or 4 months, whatever.
Personally, it keeps me closer to the song. As you're saying, with streaming the way it goes, I mean, everything does come and go so fast. You don't even as an album fan. I'm an album fan. It's not like I spend as much time with an album as I used to or anything like this. So I know this song. I get to live this song. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea of. I mean, I'm like you, where I don't really listen to singles per se. I like albums, and I ritualistically listen to an album. I'll put it on and just listen to it. And I love listening to music that way. It's the way I grew up. So, but I just feel like it was really just a matter of the ability, the writer's block. I just couldn't get to a point when I thought album. How do I do this? I know it's just so much to do, Of course, I do it all the time with other stuff, and I should be able to do it. But for some reason, moving backwards and trying to just sort of reinvent Archers or redo Archers, however you want to call it, it was very stifling. I couldn't figure it out. Right. So one at a time, slow and steady,
Well, speaking of the past, I'll kind of wrap up with this if you don't mind, because it's the 20th anniversary. You mentioned Vee Vee earlier, and it hits 25 this year. And just a quick revisit on that. I was trying to find some old interviews. I think I ran across, it was CMJ probably, where you all were doing one. It's always interesting hearing an artist talk about a record in that moment that was so long ago and what it represents to them then versus what it represents to them now. But more or less, it was kind of summed up like, this was a record about rocking out. This was a record about rock and roll. Is that how you still see it?
Look, the only thing I cringe about is that you're basically it's the sound of white privilege. It's kind of like oh, I'm sorry your record label is. I'm sorry you're a middle class white kid who has this problem with your labels and You're very fortunate to be able to do music at all, especially in the modern world we live in. But at the same time, you live in the context of your life. So, and I don't think anything we said was inaccurate, or anything that I was bitching about was inaccurate. And it does give you a perspective to write from. So I do think it was a record about not only music and how it creates community, but also and how you criticize it, and how you can look at somebody just because of a sound they made and not like them. It's ridiculous. It's silly, that people have different tastes. It's fine. But that character is fun to write from. And obviously the EP and Vee Vee were very much us sort of being shocked by the fact, like, oh, these people sign you and give you money for a van because they need to make money. They're going to give you money because they want to make money off of you. And that we were frustrated by that shows how naive we were. But it's also a very honest response. And the music did matter to us, so we didn't want them, using it in a way that was distasteful to us or whatever.
Yeah, there's a great line in there, too, where you say the underground is overcrowded. And I thought, man, the more things change, the more they stay the same, too. That's
Yeah. It's funny. You come on a lyric like that, and you feel like, it's the way that started. I'm by myself. For some reason, I stayed after on a European tour. I stayed behind, and I was by myself with like 3 guitars on the London subway system, and I just remember having all these freaking guitars, and I'm sitting there, the train is packed, and that's where I came up with the lyric for The Underground is Overcrowded. And of course, coming up with it and putting it in the song, I knew it was going to mean more than that. But it is funny how things come to you. They're very unintentional. You just kind of have to grab them.
Sure.
Because now is there an underground? I don't know. Now, is there anything now it seems there isn't. If there is, we don't know about it,
well,
because it's so shoved so far down.
Yeah, I guess
the internet.
I guess that's what I was saying, because there's just so much. There's just so much, and there definitely is still a mainstream. And to me, if there's a mainstream, then there's an underground.
Sure.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't really. I'm not projecting, of course. Just more of a comment of like how, in those some ways, a musician in their 20s, 25 years ago, isn't so different than a musician in their 20s and the things that they would have to, complain about now.
Right.
So.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And it is true. The internet didn't crush it. It almost just gave it an avenue to be heard. So it's less. It's bigger now, like you're saying. So I don't know what it is, but it's overwhelming.
Right.
And not necessarily in a bad way,
Yeah, there are less staples on the phone lines, on the phone poles anyway.
Yeah, and nobody knows the name. Like the last band that existed where you knew the names of everybody in the band was like REM or U2 or something.
Right.
Nobody knows the band names of Arcade Fire or whatever. They don't know. They don't know they might know the singer or something, but I miss that.
I do too. What a sad note to end this on. This music is so fucking good. The new Archers with Raleigh Days. I cannot wait to hear what comes next. I seriously can't. You've set the bar high already, so keep going.
Thank you very much. We'll do our best. I don't know how it'll go, but we feel, you put it out because you believe in it, so to some degree. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you believing in it. Eric, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time today. We'll see you around, man. Take care.
See you around, man. Thank you for doing it. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
My thanks to Eric Bachmann. Archers of Loaf are back. The new single is called Raleigh Days. Sounds like we got plenty more to look forward to after this one as well. So we'll keep our ears open for those. Thanks to you for checking out the episode here. You've made it to the end. Congratulations. Hopefully you enjoyed it enough where you're like, hey, I like these things. I'm going to subscribe to the series. Again, iTunes and Apple Podcasts. You can find us there. You can also find us at Spotify or even YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts from. Just type in Kyle Meredith with. If you can give the series a rating, that's always a huge help. But at the least, would love to have you as a subscriber. And if you find some inspiration, you can say hi in the comment box. Tell me where you're listening from, something you liked about the interview, or just how much you love that Archers of Loaf are back. After that, head to WFPK.org, where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres and music news and anniversary spins and bonus interviews, too. Again, that's WFPK.org. ConsequenceOfSound.net has your music and film news. You can also find me on just about any social media platform at Kyle Meredith. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Do you read Stephen King? Good news. There's a club for you. The Losers Club. Every Friday, us losers journey through the never-ending wastelands of King's Dominion. We sink our teeth into each of King's novels, dive deep into the lore, and review every adaptation. Even better, we're always having guests over. Thomas Jane, Will Wheaton, Mary Lambert, Mick Garris, the list goes on. So what are you waiting for? Join us as we read on through long days and pleasant nights.